Thanks very much for dialing in today. It's good to see you. What I'm going to talk about today is how you recruit for developers using various social media tools. I'm going to do a very quick run through of various different options, various different sites that you can use. Please do get in touch with me if you've got any questions. Unfortunately, we can't take questions during the webinar itself, just due to the volume of participants. But please, you've got my contact details there. You can get me on Twitter, probably very easily at Billy McDiarmid. I use Twitter a fair amount. You can connect with me. Please do connect with me through LinkedIn if you haven't done so already, or you can contact me on my mobile number, which is detailed below. So, recruiting for developers using social media. Most of the time when you're recruiting for the majority of developer or engineering candidates, then actually LinkedIn isn't your best option. There are multiple, loads and loads of different options that are available to you. There are more options cropping up every single day. We're going to cover off three of the main ones today: Stack Overflow, GitHub, Twitter. We'll talk about one or two other sources as well if we have time, and I'll show you a couple of different ways of getting contact information for developers. So, just going to change my screen. I'm just going to move over onto my browser. So if you bear with me a moment just to switch across. I'm going to start first of all by talking to you about Stack Overflow. Now, Stack Overflow, if you haven't used Stack Overflow or haven't read it before, Stack Overflow is a Q&A site. It's part of the Stack Exchange suite of websites, which if I click on Stack Exchange, then it tells you all the different communities that are available. You've got an academic one, amateur radio, Android. You've even, quite amusingly, you've got a Lego one as well, which is their Lego Answers. Stack Overflow is set up for people to contribute their questions, their queries about the topic that they're discussing, and then it allows other users to then contribute to that question, and if that person contributes in a valuable manner to the conversation, then the user will receive points and will receive votes for it. So I'll just use the first question on the page here as an example. Okay, if I click through into that. Bear with me a moment. And what you can see here, this is a question around using PHP, JavaScript, MySQLDB, around Firefox as well. Tells you the question, so the users put their question on, put lots of information, lots of technical information about it. And then if I scroll right down to the bottom, then we've got information about the user. We've got some comments and questions about it. There's no answers yet, no full answers to that question yet, because it seems to be relatively new, but it does tell you who that person is, who that user is. It tells you a couple of people initially who are contributing to the conversation. Dr. Molly is asking a couple of questions, okay, before they actually commit to an answer. If I click on Jean-Luc R's name, then what that does is it takes me into the profile. Now, Jean-Luc R's profile isn't a very good profile. It doesn't have a huge amount of information. You don't have any website information, location, age. His reputation is very poor, so he's actually relatively inexperienced on the site. He's only asked a couple of questions, and you can see he's been a member of it for a year. So he's got a pretty poor profile. But the good thing is, all this information, the person's profile name, website, location, age, reputation, and then tags, i.e. the questions that they've, the skills and development languages, for example, that the person's been asking or answering questions around, are all available. They're all publicly viewable, and they're all indexed by search engines. So they're indexed by Google. That means that we can quite easily use a Google string to run a search against Stack Overflow to find potentially candidates who match the criteria that we're looking for. So I'm just going to go to Google for a moment, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out an example string that I've built in true Blue Peter style. Here's one I prepared earlier, and I'm going to put that in. Now I'll talk you through this string a bit at a time, and please, if you want a copy of this, then please get in touch with me. That's no problem at all. But what I'm telling Google is, Google, I only want you to search against stackoverflow.com/users, and that makes sure that the only results that are returned are user profiles rather than any of the other information that's actually contained within Stack Overflow. I'm telling Google I want profiles that match the phrase Ruby and the phrase New York. So I want people to be skilled in the language Ruby on Rails. You could of course put in or Ruby on Rails as well, but you've got the word Ruby in, so that should pick people up. The only one I've maybe put in just in case is sometimes it could be represented as Ruby dash. So I could maybe put that in. Sorry, Ruby on dash Rails, just in case. New York. And then what I'm telling Google is actually with this string, well, I only want you to give me profiles that have got a website on it. And that means that I would be able to track down more contact information for that person if the person has got their website. So what I'm saying is, okay, Google, website, only give me pages that have got a website that ends in .com, .net, .me, or .uk. And then what I'm saying is, actually, the example that we gave there was for that previous profile. That chap had a reputation of 6. There are loads and loads of profiles on the website that don't have any reputation at all. So I'm going to tell Google that I don't want to see any pages from the site that have got a 0 reputation. So that's a really straightforward X-ray string. It's looking at all the publicly available pages. If I hit return, okay, then that's bringing me back 55 results that match that search. Okay, so really quick, really easy. You can add to that search, you can remove from it, but that's just a really basic, really standard search that you can use. I can then open up these profiles. And this should all be relatively good profiles because I've stated that they need to have a website. So yeah, brilliant. I've got Kevin, reputation is 413, that's okay. I've then got his website as well, so that means I've got more information about him. Same with the user Pete, great, I've got his website, he's got a fantastic reputation, 6,548. Okay, I've got Excalibur, less so, 845, but they're all good, decent quality profiles. These guys are all active, they've all been involved in the community. They're giving me a bit of information. In some cases, you know, I've got this chap here, he's telling me he's a lead developer at. You know, that's something you could potentially build into your string. If you only want to include people that have got some reference to a job, then you could, you know, you could put in something like developer at. Okay, could change that just to only bring in results where people are actually specifically telling you where they're working. So that's reduced that down to 16 results there. So it's really, really flexible in terms of what you can do. You can think of lots and lots of different permutations. Again, the number one rule with this kind of thing is just think about the type of information that will be going onto the profile, the person. Put yourself in the developer's shoes. You know, what kind of information are they going to be loading? How are they going to word it? Think about it in the format of a profile. One thing to point out, just about, in fact, sorry, what I'll do is I'll park what I was going to say there. I'm going to move on to looking at GitHub actually very quickly just now. Now, similarly, you can you know, use a pre-built string for this. I always recommend using Evernote. I keep all my strings in Evernote like this that I want to use I suppose my base strings, my template strings. I've just done the same thing there with my GitHub string. I'll just talk you through that. So I've just copied and pasted it into the address bar. So again, I'm wanting Google just to look at the site github.com. I'm just going to use the same criteria. I'm going to use Ruby New York. And it's just a little bit more complicated on GitHub to make sure that you're only returning profile pages. The profile pages don't have a similar kind of format to the way they do in Stack Overflow. So rather than run a positive string, i.e. tell Google exactly what I want, what I'm having to do in this case is I'm actually having to tell Google what I don't want, generally speaking. So I don't want pages that have got the phrase @master, or in URL tab, or in URL jobs, or in URL articles, because all of those pages aren't profile pages, and for the purposes of this search, I only want to see profile pages, I only want to see user pages. Okay, I'll just actually talk you through GitHub, before I run that string. GitHub's a slightly different website. It's a repository. It allows collaboration. It's where software engineers and software developers will log on to share ideas, to share ideas with the community, and it allows for contribution to code, and also allows you to pick up new ideas by extracting extracting other code. There's quite a lot of open source code on there that you're free to use, that you're able to use in your own project. So it's all about, whereas Stack Overflow is about Q&A, GitHub's very much about collaboration. And as much as there is a Q&A element to it, it's more about talking to other users about projects, contributing, and storing the results of your project online. Okay, you can see loads and loads of different examples. You, as a member of the public, are able to log on, excuse me, and use GitHub if you were so inclined to find various bits of code in various bits of different languages. Now, similarly though, it's got quite a strong trail in that when users are using GitHub, and what they're doing is telling GitHub about the skills that they've got, about the languages that they actually use, and about the type of work that they're going to do. So I'm just going to run that string that I've spoken to you about. Okay, that's brought me up 787 results. You can see here, I'll just highlight this URL. That's why we have to use the kind of negative search, because a GitHub profile doesn't actually have anything, say, related to profile or users or anything in the URL. It's just github.com/ then the user's name. So I'm just going to open up a couple of profiles just to show you the format. Got Kane Levy. Okay, loads of information here about him, about his skills, about his experience. You can see he's Ruby, so that's why it's picked up in his search. You can see his repositories. That's his own work, that's his work that he's working on and is stored online. You can see his public activity as well. Okay, I'm just going to use another example. Okay, I've got AG Acevedo, acevedo.com, got all these repositories, got his skills. It tells you things like his contribution activity for a period. He's not a particularly active user. He joined in 2011. He's had his current streak. He's not been doing anything in the past week, so he's not a particularly active member of the community at all. So both those examples, GitHub and Stack Overflow, what we're doing is building a string just to take advantage of the fact that Google actually indexes all of the profile pages and all of the information that's actually contained within those profile pages into its search engine, and we can build a pretty decent search to pull that information out. So that's Stack Overflow and that's GitHub. So what other sites could we potentially use? Well, Twitter is a really, really good site for this side of things. You do get users engaging with each other. You get engineers and developers talking to each other about their different ideas, and they do load information on to their profiles. Excuse me a second. So it does contain quite a lot of information in the same way as GitHub and Stack Overflow do. Now, what I'm going to do is there is a slightly easier way to search on Twitter. I mean, you can build your own strings. They do get a bit complicated, but actually, there's a really good tool out there that I highly recommend that you look at called Follower Wonk. What Follower Wonk lets you do is actually search through your Twitter users. It uses your account. It lets you search your Twitter users and also all public Twitter users as well. It lets you search the bio for information. So it's just followerwonk.com. So I can click on here, and as you say, it says search Twitter bios. I've got the choice to search either profiles or search Twitter bios. So bios does search the information contained within their biography only, and profile searches their entire profile. So I've got a choice. Say I was looking for that, a Ruby guy in New York again. Then I could do Ruby. So the keyboard's not working too well. And then I could do New York. However, what you need to remember is that Twitter isn't just for web developers, so it is going to throw back quite a lot of results with a normal search that are false positives. So we've got people called Ruby, for example. It's taken to my third result now to actually get someone who is an actual Ruby guy. Okay, so you do need to just be careful in terms of your search and probably narrow it down a little bit. You know, there wouldn't be anything stopping you from doing I'm a Ruby in New York, just to see if anything would work with that. Okay, as you can see, I've actually brought back one result. There, I'm a Ruby on Rails beginner. You could do something like Ruby guy. That could bring up results. So again, it's just remembering to think about the type of information that people are putting onto their profiles and thinking about the format. That's not bringing anything up. Say Ruby developer. That's not bringing up any results either. But have a think about the format and have a think about the type of information. Follower Wonk's a really, really powerful site. It's free of charge. It's really, really good. It lets you kind of, do multiple areas. So what I could do is do, Ruby, and then I say I want New York, but I also wanted Chicago, Washington, San Diego. I know I'm picking fairly random, just there's no path onto that, but it does let me do that or statement in the same way as you can do in Google as well. Okay, and it lets you do things like establish a minimum following, maximum following, so you could just target people who have got a certain reputation level on Twitter as well. Okay, so once you've used either GitHub or Stack Overflow or Twitter to find your profile, then what can you then do with it, and how can you then find out more information about the person? I'm just going to use an example of this first of all. Please bear in mind that LinkedIn isn't the be-all and end-all of everything, as I said. I'm just going to bring up the profile of someone who I found earlier on today when I was running some work for a client. Now, if we look at this chap's profile, Trevor Grayson, then cool, yeah, he's got his skill sets there, he's got Ruby there. Okay, he's got some information there, but it's a fairly light profile. It's not too bad. I've seen worse profiles, but what I can actually see here is that actually Trevor's got loads and loads of different other profiles as well. And the way I actually did that is by installing a tool called Connectifier. Now, there's lots and lots of different tools that are available to you to do similar kind of things. You could use 360 Social as well as an example. My own personal preference is to use Connectifier. Now, you can only use Connectifier, or I think you can use it in Firefox as well, but I personally prefer using it in Chrome. That's just personal preference. You can go to the Connectifier website. Once you've set up your account and once you've loaded it, and what it actually does is it keeps a track of all the profiles that you've viewed as well, recently contacted and viewed. You can install it from the Google Chrome extension store. And once you've installed it, for every person that you're viewing on LinkedIn, viewing on Twitter, then it'll actually bring up a sidebar like this that gives you more information. You can see for this chap, I've got loads and loads of information. I've got his work email address, I've got his personal email address, I've got a telephone number for him, but then I've got loads and loads of different profiles as well. What we could actually check is if there's any more information about Trevor. I'm going to go to who is, and I'm going to use Trevor's domain name. I'm just going to see if there's any more contact information I can pull out about Trevor. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but it's always worth doing. Okay, so Trevor's actually hidden his information there, so there's no information available. But for other people, there might actually be mobile number information, email address information, even home address information. So that's always worth checking. But I can see here what's really good is I've got email address, I've got a telephone number, I've got links to his LinkedIn, to his Facebook, to his Twitter, to his Google+, to his GitHub and to his Stack Overflow. It's all easy, it's all in one place. And for developers, to be honest, as soon as you find one profile, then it's very, very easy to find another. Follow the breadcrumbs. You can always run searches on email addresses, you can run searches on any little bit of information that you've got, and you will be able to find them. And if I look at Trevor, I can go into his GitHub profile, I can go into his Stack Overflow profile, and this gives me a really, really good idea of Trevor, who he is, what he's done. Gives me the type of work that he's actually doing. Great. And then I can actually go into Trevor's website, and I've got his resume and his project information there. So there's loads and loads of different information available. So whenever you're doing any this type of search at all, make sure that you've got the Connectifier tool or another similar tool available to you, just so that you can cross-reference and pull together as much information as you possibly can about candidates. Okay, so I've covered off the three main sites. I've spoken about Stack Overflow, I've spoken about GitHub, I've spoken about Twitter, but there are plenty of other sites you can potentially use as well. Think about things like Meetup, for example. Meetup is a really, really good site that's used for organising groups of like-minded individuals to get together and talk about things that are important to them. It could be work things or it could be personal things. So I could run a Google string on meetup.com. I could search Ruby, and I could search New York. And that's what that's going to do, is that's going to bring me to pages about my topic there. The first one there is the New York City Ruby Meetup, nyc.rb. If I then go into nyc.rb, then I can click in, see lots and lots of different information. Okay, I can see all the members here. Okay, some of the members have got their full names, some of them don't. I'll just use Mr. Grant Hutchins as an example here. Okay, it's actually brought up Connectifier for Grant. So I've got loads of information, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, etc. all about this. You can get loads of information on his profile as well. He's a member of Agile Design Experience, Ruby Gem, New York Pivotable Tracker, a CSS site, And you've also got things that other users are asking about. So this user, Karen Krebs, has asked them about Firebug. So you could, it's possible that Karen is also another potential candidate as well. So there's loads and loads of rich information, not just on GitHub, Stack Overflow, LinkedIn, Twitter, but on other sites as well. Okay. So moral of the story here is don't restrict yourself to just the basic sites. Your number one port of call for any technical search or your first two sites should always be Stack Overflow and GitHub. Make sure that you're checking other sites, so checking other sources of information. Think about how people are writing things on their profile. What's the context? How are they describing the projects that they work on? How are they describing the skills that they actually use? And make sure that you're building all that type of information into your search. Okay, so thank you very much indeed for your time. Pleasure speaking to you all. Please do let me know if you've got any questions on my contact information as we discussed.